So we ended up changing the nozzle. It was working, but it was not running very nice. And if you look at the pattern here, you can see the nozzle was pointing in one direction. It was hot here, it was cold here. So we put a new one in. I think it's partially blocked. So the cone, they're actually spraying the oil in a cone, and I think the pattern is slightly distorted because that is I don't know how old. We're only living here for 2 years, and I don't know anything about the history here. So anyway, let's give that another clean and make sure there's no debris in it, and then we'll put it back together and give it another try. We also need to address that measurement hole up there, and yeah, it's pretty simple. Get it out. Couldn't make out the make. It looked like a Delavan, but it doesn't matter really, as long as the pattern is the same and the spraying angle. I went down in size 1 number because it's actually a bit big. What you're trying to achieve with an oil burner is long running times rather than short high power runs. You want a longer run time, which is more efficient. So you produce the same amount of energy, but just distributed over a longer time. And that's the reason why I go down in nozzle size, because that reduces the power of the burner. So it will run longer to produce the same amount of energy, which is in the long run a little bit more efficient. It's nitpicking, but we'll have it on try it, because it's not so super cold here, so you don't need the full power. If you live in a very cold area, you want the full power of your boiler, obviously, but we don't need that. I have usually run intervals of less than 5 minutes, which is a bit low. So we'll see what this one does. Let's clean that, put it together, and try to get some measurements out of it. So while we're there, we decided to pull the baffle plates and give it a clean. It's just those plates which are directing the gas flow in a direction to give more efficiency. Hey, you need to take that cover off. So another scrub, and yeah, just get it out with a shop vac. The reason why this doesn't come out is there is an inlay, basically a threaded rivet or a thread rivet, and it turns in the pipe. So we need to address that as well. Anyway, yeah, there's still a bit of dirt left. Just use a wire brush and clean it as good as you can. Check for rust spots or leaks. Can't see any. Right, let's carry on. So we ended up drilling a new hole. We can't get that bastard out. It's a rivet nut and it sits in the hole and it rotates. There's no way to get it out. So it's no problem drilling a new hole. Just put another screw in. Don't make it too short. That might be a bit short. We can take this one, and it just fits nicely into the hole, and it won't come out. That's standard practice. Anyway, let's get the baffles back in. So that's our last one. Just give them a little rub. The yellow stuff is actually sulfur from the oil. Eating it up. So we got the baffles back in, and looks good so far. Make sure they're seated correctly as they should be. That's obviously different on any oil burner. Make sure nothing moves. Put the cover back, fire it up, and pray. Alright. So let's see what it does. It may not fire because nozzle is smaller. Let's see. Maybe you got too much air, I don't know. Let's see how it fires. If it's firing. Yeah. Sounds better. Alright, so we leave it running for a few minutes to make sure we got some temperature. Problem is if the boiler is cold, your smoke readings are off because you got all the condensation and all the garbage. Especially if you cleaned it, there's a lot of dust in the air or in the fumes, and you don't want that in your smoke reading because that's actually skewing the smoke reading. And so, what we're going to do, we look outside if it's smoking, and if it's smoking, we just open up the air for now. To get it up to temperature. We want at least 40-50 degrees to make sure we don't suffer from condensation, otherwise you get some wet spots or damp spots on your smoke paper. Let's look outside how it looks like. Oh, there's no black smoke coming out here, so we are on the lean side, that's okay. Alright, let's get in and wait for a bit to get that heated up. Okay, it's getting weird now. We thought there is a pressure problem. Don't know if it's visible, if there is any glare or not. Hopefully not. It just stops in the middle, and then you wait a minute and it starts again. But the pressure is fairly constant. There is a bit of a flicker here, so all we can do is waiting. If the needle flickers that much, there is probably a bit of air coming with. We don't know. If it's a blockage, it sounds different. Now it just stopped. Pressure is fine, and it just stopped. There's no drop in pressure, and it turned on, and it doesn't run. So the pressure is not the issue, which is a bit of a pain. It burns fine, it just doesn't run. So I also checked the clutch of the oil pump, but we have pressure, so it doesn't drop. Let's swap the control unit and see if that makes a difference. We'll see. Because flame is fine, everything is fine. So it's still doing it. And the pressure stays constant and the flame just drops. I forgot about it, but yeah, I don't do this every day anymore. But most likely, get out of here, the coil of this coil is energizing the solenoid valve, and they have a habit of dying, and this comes out really hard, so you can't see anything. What it might be is that it just stops working over time. It's a fault which happens every now and then. Doesn't smell burned. We got another one. We just fit that and see. It's just a spring washer and a nut. Easy to change. Because what really was bugging me was that it doesn't fire after I reset it. What I did was I had another control unit here, and I swapped it directly, and it didn't fire. So it can't be the control unit. We have enough oil, so it must be something with the oil supply to the nozzle. The problem is that on this particular oil pump, the pressure I see is actually before the solenoid valve and not after. Older pumps do have some plug holes on the surface, on the outer surface, where you can measure the pressure after the valve. But this one doesn't have that. Okay, so we fitted a new valve. Fires nicely. All we can do is waiting. Well, that's what we're gonna do now. Again, if I swap the control unit straight away for a cold unit, and it happens immediately, it doesn't fire. We most likely don't get any oil, because I heard a click inside when the solenoid valve comes on, but the reason why this is a way of diagnosing is because it's some sort of thermal trip. If this thing has tripped, you're gonna wait for a while until the thermal trip inside cools down. Even if you take it off and put it back on, it will be still on fault. So when you swap the units, you got a fresh unit which is cold, and if it doesn't work, there must be something else. So the light sensor obviously sees it, because every time there is a flame, the light sensor is okay. I can see that. So the only remaining option was basically the solenoid valve. I just didn't think about it because I'm not in that trade anymore for many years, but I still can remember some of the stuff. The misleading thing was actually when I tried it with just one unit, with just one control unit, the coil had time to cool down, and I think it's a thermal fault, so it works for a while, and then it stops working. Again, it's a fairly common fault. It happens every now and then. I don't know how old that thing is. Anyway, if that's running okay for a while, we're gonna do the emissions check and remove all our test gear here, because it's leaking a little bit here, but I couldn't do anything. I didn't have the right adapters. So we'll come back later when we do the emissions. Well, it appears that was the problem, because it's working okay now. I had it running for about 15-20 minutes and it didn't happen anymore. So we remove all the gear here, and then we'll do the emissions. Now maybe I'll leave the gauge in there, so just in case I need to change anything. Yeah, let's pump some smoke and see what we get. Don't know if that's visible. I would say that's a 2-ish, so we need a little bit more air, tiny little bit. I'll just do it again. It's just put it in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's a 1 now. I don't know if it's visible on camera. That was before and that's now. That looks good to me. There's a bit of moisture on it, I can see that. The dark spots are moisture, but looks pretty good. So I'll see if I can get the CO2 meter to read. I don't know if it works. I haven't used it for a while. I think we're okay now. Screw this. And yeah, to adjust the air, just move it to the left on this burner here. More air means less smoke, and it's just really as simple as that. Okay, let me check the CO2 thing. Just checking the temperature is about 220 degrees Celsius. Looks okay to me. We're running pretty hot. We're running about 90 degrees temperature on the... I expect a bit less. I expect about 150, but we're running pretty hot because we're running out of time here. So that looks good to me. So we'll see if that thing works here. Again, I haven't used it for a long time, so the fluid might be no good anymore. We'll see. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't work anymore. I think the fluid is old, so we need to live with what we have. We just go for smoke. That's fine. I'm not gonna refill that today. It's basically some what's the name? I just can't remember it. The problem is it reads only about 3%, which is impossible because we're on the smoke limit, and we should get at least some 12%ish, or at least 11. And we don't get it, so I think this thing is just old fluid. I don't know how long it was in the unit. Anyway, we'll do that. We'll do that at some point. Anyway, let's wrap that up for now. We're done so far. It's working. Smoke level looks good. CO2 we can't measure because our test gear is not ready to go. And but I can't be bothered right now. It's Sunday afternoon, and we had enough fun with that thing. Anyway, that's it from the oil burner. Quite a bit of an unusual, or quite a bit of fun, strange fault, but we got it done at the end, and it's always good to have things in stock. At least we got it cleaned. So the nozzle was not the issue, it was actually the solenoid valve, but the nozzle was pretty old as well. I could see that there's a lot of dirt in it, so it can only be better now. Anyway, that's it from the oil burner. Give it a bit of a clean on the outside, but I can't see the point of filming that. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, until next time.